Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Greg Furman, market analyst here at TraderPlanet.com, and this is the Forex market outlook for the week of May the 3rd, 2010. Now, to get things started this week, we're going to have, again, a very volatile start to the week. We've got a bailout plan that's being announced as I speak in the Eurozone, on Greece specifically. Now, how the market is going to react to this bailout plan is left to be seen. In my respectful opinion, the situation in Greece is much worse than what they've let on. I think that's going to spin off into some of the other Eurozone countries, and I don't think there's anything really that the European Union can do to stop that. So we'll see. We'll certainly see how this plays out, but for now we're dealing with a lot of fundamental issues, so we're going to be using the technicals to try and sort out the fundamentals and see where we're going from here. Now, to get things started, we're going to again look at the US dollar index to see what's happening. We're going to start with the triple EMA crossover and the predicted TSI from Vantage Point. Now, looking at the US dollar index, we can see that we have the triple EMA crossover has made its move yet again last week, just about April the 19th, April the 20th, I should say. Now, we've moved up again over this 82, but we've subsequently moved lower. So our key levels here, 81.40, 81.69, and 81.97. Now, what we want to do now is go in and have a look at the short, medium, and long-term crossovers. Now, looking at the short-term crossover here, we can see that it's making a move to the downside. Now, in most cases, we very seldomly want to trade off this short-term indicator because it's not giving us an accurate picture of the overall picture. So again, very important that we focus more on the medium and the long-term crossovers. Now, in this particular case, the medium and the long-term crossover is very clearly telling us that the US dollar index, from a medium-term perspective, is going higher, contradicting that short-term indicator. Now, there are times certainly when that short-term indicator is good, but more for intraday trading. So in this particular case, respecting the heavy fundamentals that we have coming up to start the week, the medium and the long-term crossovers and the triple EMA is a far better way to move forward with this. Now, looking at the long-term crossover here from Vantage Point on the US dollar index, very clearly pointing higher. So you can see down here I have this other indicator. This is the predicted true strength indicator from Vantage Point. This is an indicator This is an indicator that I use basically in all of my trading, a very powerful indicator. It can only be found on the Vantage Point software. That's primarily, again, this is giving us a very good indication. We can see that it attempted to cross the trigger here, was unable to do that, subsequently the US dollar index then moves significantly higher. So let's have a look at some of these other indicators here. Now, if we were to put the predicted stochastics on here with the predicted true strength indicator, we can see that predicted stochastics is giving a sell signal. Now, this is crossing over at oversold level. It's crossed over the trigger. Now, let's look at another indicator. Let's take that predicted stochastics off, and let's apply the predicted MACD. The predicted MACD, in my opinion, is giving a far more accurate signal here. We're crossing over the trigger to the upside. We're above the zero line. Now, for overbought and oversold, let's then add the predicted RSI from Vantage Point. The predicted RSI is sitting at 50, which is trend ready levels, coming off somewhat overbought. So we have essentially, it looks like we're getting ready into a trending move on the US dollar index, and I suspect that's going to be higher. Now, again, we want to use multiple indicators. We can see that essentially my charts are extremely uncluttered here. I don't have the neural index on here. I don't have the medium-term crossover, the long-term crossover, predicted differences. I like to keep my charts as clean as possible, and to always, before I enter into a short-term position, it's extremely important that I look at the long-term picture. Again, intraday trading can be very dangerous because simply by the fact that a short-term signal ignores what's really going on in the bigger picture. So my focus is usually the three main crossovers, the triple EMA crossover, plus those additional indicators from Vantage Point. Then I'll go in and look at the daily report. So looking at the US dollar index from that perspective, what we do now is we're going to go in and look at the daily report. We can see, again, from the daily report, I've got everything I need on that report. I don't need to add that to my chart. All that's going to do is clutter up my chart and potentially confuse the situation. So we can see that the neural index is down. We have 82.13 as the high, 81.48 as the low. Predicted short-term difference is negative. However, the predicted medium and long-term differences are all positive. These numbers, the closer they are to zero, means they're flat. The more into the black they are, it's telling me that it's overbought or oversold. The more to the negative, when we start getting towards the 150, the 200, negative or positive, it becomes overbought or oversold. So it's very simple to read it off the daily report. It's nice and clean. Again, I don't need to clutter up my charts. So going forward with that, we've looked at the US dollar index. The bias here, we've got some short-term volatility. Again, looking at this US dollar index, we're going to be doing this presentation a little differently this week too, because we're going to have to look at the global markets. We can't just focus on the US or just on the Eurozone. We have to look at everything. So looking again, we've got this short-term crossover from vantage point to the downside. However, again, the predicted MACD, the predicted RSI, and the predicted TSI, that's 3 of our 4 main indicators, are all suggesting higher. The predicted stochastics is crossing over to the downside. So in this case, majority rules. 3 of our 4 powerful indicators from vantage point are suggesting that the US dollar index is going to go higher. So we stay with that and ignore that stochastics in this particular case. Now, what we need to do, what we need to have a look at here now is what's going on with these equities. So we're going to start here. We're going to look at the U.S. We're going to show what's happening on a global level here. I'm going to, what we're going to do here is I'm just going to switch this for a second, and we're going to take the predicted TSI off, and we're going to use the medium-term crossover from vantage point, looking at these equities. Now I'm going to apply this to all of the equities on a global basis. What we're going to do then, we're going to look at the Dow Jones Industrial, and we're going to put it up against all of the other global indices to see what's happening. Now, bearing in mind, we've got that still strength in the US dollar index. So we can see here that the Dow Jones Industrial Average is running flat, trying to make a cross to the downside, but the US dollar index remains positive. Now, looking at Germany, Germany is taking the brunt of this Eurozone mess with Greece and everything else, and we can see that the DAX 30 is aggressively beginning to move lower. Now, from a global standpoint, if the market perceives that this bailout is more positive than negative, all of these equities could reverse. Now, the main thing to note here is that, again, looking at the Vantage Point software and these global futures contracts on these major equities, we can see here that the FTSE 100, again, also crossing over to the downside, following the Dow Jones Industrial. Now, looking at the Hang Seng, again, crossing over to the downside. Now we're into Hong Kong. We can see that this is a global issue. This is not related just to the Eurozone. Now, the one of interest here is the Nikkei. The Nikkei is running flat and almost getting ready to make a move to the upside. The Nikkei and the Dow Jones Industrial Average, what I want everybody to see here is that not only is there a correlation between the US dollar index and the Japanese yen futures contracts, there's also a very similar correlation between the Dow Jones Industrial and the Nikkei. So again, the world's 2 biggest economies, Japan and the US, again, very interesting that we can put all of these correlations together. This suggests that the Nikkei is running flat and could start moving higher, and the Dow Jones likely to follow. Now, again, we're looking at things from a global perspective. We can see that the S&P 500 coming under a little bit of pressure here. So, again, we're looking at all of these things together. The global indices are running together here. It's not just the DAX 30, it's not just the Greek stock markets, it's all of them. This is the basis of intermarket technical analysis that we really need to take into consideration to see exactly what's going on here. So